So yeah, I wear a bunch of hats. A lot of you may know me as a philanthropist, but also in my other life, I'm a youth counselor and also a social entrepreneur, which I was so happy to get that tag when I looked at the agenda. So thank you for that. So I guess the first way I would love to start is that it's okay to wear a bunch of hats. We don't have to define ourselves just by one thing, nor do we have to define our girls or young women. But just that one thing, because it's all part of the process. It's all part of self-discovery, which is what I'm going to be talking to you about. I thought it would be fun to start with how I learned I could be a philanthropist. What an amazing opportunity that was. But I was given a mandate by my parents to go figure it out as a family and also as an individual, personally, how we could best use our/my resources in the world. And that's such an incredible gift. So I'll tell you a funny story. Some of you may have heard of John Wood. He was an amazing founder, was a marketing specialist at Microsoft, who left Microsoft to change the world. Wrote a great book about that. His name's John Wood. And what he started was this organization called Room to Read. And he started it because something touched his heart. And that was, he was, like many of us maybe will have the opportunity to do in our lifetime, is to go to Kathmandu and go trekking. But what was really different about John is when he went to Kathmandu and he visited one of the local schools right outside of Kathmandu, he noticed that the only books that they had were under lock and key, and they were smut novels for adults in English. And he was really touched by this and said, okay, I've got to do something about this, and had a book drive and had everybody, while he was on vacation, send books to his parents' garage. And he was completely and totally overwhelmed by people's response. And he personally brought those books back to Nepal with him. And it's just incredible that he then went on to develop a huge international nonprofit that specializes in both changing the world through the gift of education, but in particularly offering girls scholarships, and also building up their self-confidence through comprehensive social emotional learning curriculums. And so I'm telling this story because one of the things that I learned from John, who is now the most amazing social entrepreneur that I've had the privilege to get to know, is it's not enough just to bring somebody a bunch of books or even train their teachers, which is how he started out. Especially for girls, it's super important to give them the confidence to dream along with that, whatever they need to reach that dream, whether it's a bike to get yourself to those schools or whether it's the opportunity to continue your education beyond 8th grade, which many of those kids were not given. And I can't tell you how much this chance meeting of John Wood in the coffee line of my very first conference that I attended to try to figure out for my family what to do with our resources. I went to this global philanthropy forum and had this happy accident of meeting John Wood in the coffee line, has had on both how I am a philanthropist and what I helped my family to develop. And I think it's so important. I went on to study psychology, and in particular counseling psychology. And one of the important concepts that I learned about when I was studying psychology was this thing called existential impotence. Now, I'm not sure if anybody's ever heard of that, but that's basically when you don't see the power that you have. And I think that when I started thinking about women and girls and both international education programs, as well as just what could we do here in our own country, I started realizing that it's not that they don't have the power, it's often that they don't see it. And so a lot of my comments today are really going to be about how do we help them see that power that they do in fact already have. And it seems like solving the existential impotence problem is hard to do in 8 minutes or less. But so I've tried to boil it down to like 4 easy steps. And those are noticing, building confidence, offering support, and aligning passion to purpose. So I just want to kind of quickly go over those steps. And when I say noticing, noticing is noticing our girls, noticing that they exist, noticing what they are curious about, helping them notice themselves, because that's often a lot of the problems is this sort of invisibility, which makes you feel kind of powerless if you don't notice that you do have those special gifts and talents. There's a lot of noise out there in the world, and it's our task, I think, to help the girls and young women to find their voice, in that noise. And maybe it starts when they're real little, as parents, as moms and dads. And I speak of girls because this is the focus of the conference, but really my comments I really think are directed for all kids, is to take the time to notice when our kids are really at their best, when they seem to be sort of in that flow state where everything seems a bit easy for them. I'm not saying that, becoming a great, kid in STEM is easy by any stretch of the imagination. But if we can find those places where kids naturally feel connected to what they're doing and are able to really define for themselves what they want to do from a very early age, whether it's, what toys do they want to play with, to what stories do they want to tell in English class, to what subjects they want to study and what projects they choose to do. I mean, I think that one of the issues is that we make too many decisions for our kids rather than asking open questions. Sometimes we ask questions because we want to tell them what the answer is going to be, and that's not really a question, is it? I think it's really important that we ask questions with an open mind and let them provide the answers. And it may not be a straight path, clearly, as they discover themselves, which I think is really the beginning of all wisdom, is when you have that sort of self-awareness and self-appreciation and discovery of your own talents and your own sort of meaning of life. I mean, I think that a lot of people my age are starting to look at that when they're 60 years old, kind of saying, well, what is the meaning of life? What is our purpose? And, I have two teens myself, a 14 and a 15-year-old, and I work on this with them all the time. I talk to them about why they're doing an assignment, about why they feel a certain way, and helping them to understand the reasons of their why is incredibly important. Getting back to the existential crisis, I mean, I had my own crisis when I was 24, so I wasn't a teen, but I was a young woman, and my existential crisis was, I got slapped in the face and looked at my own finiteness, as existentialists call it, is when you think you're going to die. Okay, I had not a near-death experience, but certainly was a little too close to death. I was diagnosed with a very aggressive malignant brain tumor when I was 24, which nobody had lived from. So as far as I was concerned, that was not quite a death sentence, but it was right up there. And I had to look at, how was I living my life? And what did I really want to do? And how did I want to leave my mark on the world? And I didn't think I was going to have the next, over 35 years to really, leave that mark. But I think it's so important that, not everyone's going to be a STEM kid. Not everyone's going to do STEM the same way. Maybe their gift is not necessarily in the hard sciences, but standing next to the hard sciences and doing something, whether it's marketing or something else, or art. I have a son who's an artist, and it could be doing something art related that's related to something in STEM to, help motivate other young people to learn about those subjects. It's really hard to say, and it's not our place, I don't think, as parents, as educators, as support people, as therapists, or any of that to really define for the kid how they're going to leave their mark on the world. And I don't think it's fair to us to leave it up to them, when they're 60 years old to figure it out. And I bet you, I don't know enough, women in STEM, but I bet you it would be very interesting to go back and talk to the parents and those kids who are now adults, and find out, how was it? Were they railroaded into a career, or is it something that they got to choose? And I always think that it's super important when we talk about motivation is to find that place where a young person is intrinsically motivated to pursue something. And I don't think it happens overnight. I mean, I think that we have to have this open discovery process where they can find things that they're good at and equally find things that they're absolutely not good at. And that's absolutely fine. They can change course as many times as they want. And I think as parents especially, I'll speak for myself, we think we want the best for our kids, and sometimes we think we know what that is. And in fact, if any of you have teens, a lot of times the more we want something for the kids, the less they want it. So I think it's a matter of finding that place, inside themselves to begin exploring what they want to do. But then second to that, you need to have the confidence to be able to be okay with failure. And it's okay to recognize those little steps along the way for these kids in meeting their goals, by asking them, what were you proud of today? Whether it was at school or something that happened on the playground or in sports or whatever, because it all adds up to giving them the confidence that they need to pursue their dreams. Even if they have like a bad situation happen, sometimes they just have to make the best of a bad situation. And as adults, we all know, looking back at our bad situations or even our bad choices in life, that's what's given us some element of resilience to help us pursue and help us define what it is that we really want and how we want to look back at our, like one game I've played with my own kids is like, well, what would your future self look back? Would they be proud of what you did today? And they really like that, because then they can define for themselves, what were those moments that were those aha moments for them? What were those moments where they really felt the most alive or the most in flow or whatever? And I think, so, I'm not in STEM. I'm not able to speak to that. But what I can speak about is internal motivation and how important that is to keep those dreams. But equally important is not to just let kids dream, but actually give them the tools to how to get there. And it's not like a straight path, right? It's allowing for those ups, downs, and sideways and everything, the happy accidents along the way. Give them time to recharge. All those things, the power of laughter even, and joy. It can't be underestimated in people wanting to reach their goals, whatever they are. So I really encourage everyone to think about that when we think about how is it that we are motivating our kids. I mean, I think that we have to turn that around and say, how are they motivating themselves? And when I was thinking, just as the last point is social purpose. And I really think that, I think it's super important, especially for girls and young women, although I don't want to exclude men and boys from this, but is to find that sort of, it's one thing that if we know what we're talented at, it's one thing to know that we're good at what we're good at and what comes easy to us or what kind of mark we want to put on the world. But I think with girls especially, it's important to look at why they are doing something. What is the social purpose? How are they helping themselves along with other people? We're not isolated. We're in this whole world together. And I think just by nature of how girls are wired differently, that's a key part, is if they can feel connected to what it is that they're learning or what it is that they're doing or the job that they're doing. How does it overall fit in the big picture of the world and in their connections with other people? Because I really feel, especially with girls, that their success, their ultimate success, comes from aligning their heart with their mind, and then of course with their will to achieve. And I think that the most important thing I can say is to what I tell my daughter: hey, if something pulls on your heart or tugs on your heartstrings, pay attention to that, because that could turn into something, even if you don't know ultimately what it's going to turn into or how you're going to get there. It's that sort of that passion about feeling touched, feeling connected, to, a purpose greater than oneself, maybe, that will give them the ultimate ongoing motivation. Because we're not talking about being motivated this school year or this school year plus next school year. We're talking about some careers and lasting decades. And how do you continue to stay motivated if you don't have a heart for what you're doing? So in closing, I would say if we want our kids, and especially our girls and young women, to be those social entrepreneurs or philanthropists or corporate executives, or just being at the best at whatever they choose to do, we need to be patient and to allow them to bring out inside themselves, how they would like to be that force for good. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheri, thank you so much. Oh, Sheri, thank you so much.